The Evzones, or Evzoni, is the name of several historical elite light infantry and mountain units of the Greek army. Today, it refers to the members of the Presidential Guard, an elite ceremonial unit that guards the Greek tomb of the unknown soldier, the presidential mansion and the gate of Evzones camp in Athens. An Evzone is also known, colloquially, as a Tsoliás. Though the Presidential Guard is a primarily ceremonial unit, all Evzones are volunteers drawn from the Hellenic Army's Infantry Corps. Prospective Evzones are initially identified at the infantry recruit training centers during basic training. There is a minimum height requirement of 1.87 meters to join. However, induction to the Presidential Guard is delayed until the recruit serves for a minimum of 6 months with one of the Army's infantry combat or campaign battalions. The unit is known for its uniform, which has evolved from the clothes worn by the Klefts who fought the Ottoman occupation of Greece. The most visible item of this uniform is the fustella, a kilt-like garment. Their distinctive dress turned them into a popular image for the Greek soldier, especially among foreigners. Etymology. The word Evzones is first attested in Homer's Iliad and derives from epsilon plus zeta omega nu eta, meaning well-girt. The word was used by ancient writers for centuries to describe a type of light infantry of unidentified equipment, probably used as a generic term to denote light infantry. History. In 1833, after the arrival of King Otto, the Greek army was organized along new lines. The Bavarian soldiers that had come with Otto formed the majority of the European line infantry battalions. Each of these units included one rifle company, designated as skirmishers or Evzone. In addition, 10 light skirmisher battalions were formed from Greeks, dressed in a uniform based on the garb of the Klefts of the War of Independence. In 1836 these battalions were reduced to 4, and 8 Mountain Guard battalions were formed in the stead. They were grouped into 4 regiments in 1843. These units were primarily engaged in patrolling the frontier, combating insurgents and hunting down the many brigands that infested the countryside. The Mountain Guard was incorporated in the strengthened skirmisher battalions in 1854. In December 1867, the first 4 elite Evzone light battalions were formed, of 4 companies each, with the task of guarding the frontier. On the 12th of December 1868, the Royal Guard detachment, initially named Ajma, later the Palace Guard, composed of 2 Evzone infantry companies and a cavalry troop, was formed. In 1880 to 1881, the Evzone units were expanded to 9 battalions. They participated in the disastrous 1897 war with Turkey as elements of the regular infantry divisions. In the aftermath of the war, through various reorganizations, the number of Evzone battalions varied from 8 to 6, operating either independently or divided between the infantry divisions, and were among the first units to be equipped with machine guns. At the time of the Balkan Wars, 8 Evzone battalions were in existence. They operated independently on the vanguard or the flanks of the army. They distinguished themselves for the fighting spirit, suffering high casualties, especially among officers. Subsequently, the Evzone units were increased to 5 regiments, which fought with distinction as elite shock troops in the First World War, the Asia Minor Campaign and the Greco-Italian War. During the German invasion in 1941, a memorable event is said to have occurred. On April 27, as the German army was entering Athens, the Germans ascended to the Acropolis of Athens and ordered the young Evzone who was guarding the flag post, Konstantinos Goukidis, to haul the Greek flag down and replace it with the swastika flag. The young soldier did so, but refused to hand over the Greek flag to the Germans, and instead wrapped himself in it and fell off the Acropolis to his death. After the occupation of the country in 1943, the collaborationist government raised a number of security battalions, which were dressed in the Evzone uniform and participated in operations against the EAMELAS partisans. They were derisively known as Germanotsoliades at Tagmatis Philides, and were disbanded after liberation in 1944. After the war, the reconstituted Hellenic army did not re-establish the Evzone regiments, their elite status and role being assumed by the newly established mountain raiding companies. The traditions and distinctions of the Evzones are, however, maintained by a special ceremonial unit, which has served under several names: Palace Guard, Flag Guard, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier Guard, Royal Guard, and after 1974, with the abolition of the monarchy, the Presidential Guard. Several regular army infantry units have been given the numbers and names of the post-1913 Evzone regiments. However, these names are only honorific. Today the Evzones form the Presidential Guard, a battalion composed of 2 Evzone companies and 1 command company. They operate out of the Georgios Zarvelas barracks on Herodoatikou Street, just behind the Parliament building. The Guard takes precedence in all military parades. The march style consists of normal march time, and at intervals for several paces, striking the ground forcefully with the right foot. The standard marching music is the Evzoniki march, played at 48 beats per minute. They guard the tomb of the unknown soldier round the clock. Guards on duty perform the movements in a very slow and highly stylized manner. They switch positions with each other every 15 minutes and remain completely motionless and at attention in the meantime. Since the guards are required to be totally still at all times, there is one Evzone in normal fatigues, uniform and police surveillance to ensure that no one approaches or harasses the guards while on duty. The little changes take place every hour on the hour, and involve the 2 incoming and 2 outgoing sentries, and a supervising corporal of the change. The grand change takes place at 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings, and involves the whole guard with its officers and a military band, all marching from the guard barracks to the tomb for the change, and back. The change is a popular Sunday morning spectacle for Athenians and tourists alike. During a demonstration in front of the Parliament in 2001, a Molotov cocktail was thrown at one of the guardhouses. The wooden construction was engulfed in flames. The Evzone on guard next to it remained in place until an officer gave him the order to move. With a scorched and partly smoking uniform on one side, the Evzone did so. In January 2010, a makeshift bomb was placed 20 meters from where the Evzones guard the tomb of the unknown soldier at Syntagma Square. Although the police informed the Evzones of the imminent threat, the guards refused to leave the posts and remained on guard while the bomb exploded. Former units. The historical units were numbered and known as Tau Alpha Gamma Mu Alpha Epsilon Upsilon Zeta Omega Nu Sigma Upsilon Nu Tau Alpha Gamma Mu Alpha Epsilon Upsilon Zeta Omega Nu. The 1st Evzone Regiment was formed in 1912, shortly before the outbreak of the Balkan Wars. The traditional and well-known Evzone regiments, which fought in World War I, the Asia Minor Campaign, and World War II, were formed after the Balkan Wars by the royal decree of the 23rd of December 1913. Since the regiments were distinctive elite units, they had dual numbers, the first numbering them in the Evzones order of seniority, the second in the overall infantry hierarchy. Thus the 542nd Evzone Regiment was the 5th Evzone Regiment, but also the 42nd Infantry Regiment, 138th Evzone Regiment, the former 1st Evzone Regiment, based in Karditsa and recruited in Thessaly, to 39th Evzone Regiment, based in Missolonghi and recruited in Aetolia Acarnania. 340th Evzone Regiment, based in Arta and recruited in Epirus. 441st Evzone Regiment, based in Varoia and recruited in Western Macedonia. 542nd Evzone Regiment, based in Lamia and recruited in central Greece. Uniform. In 1833, the uniform of the Evzones was in the unpopular Bavarian style of blue trousers, tailcoats and shako. As light infantry, the Evzones were distinguished only by green braid and plumes. In 1837, a new uniform was created based on the traditional fustella style worn by the Klefts, armatoli, and many of the famous fighters of the Greek War of Independence. At first, it was only issued to the native light infantry battalions, but its popularity led to its adoption as the official uniform of the Evzones in 1867. After a few minor changes over the years, it became the familiar uniform seen today. Present-day uniforms. Ceremonial uniforms. The present-day ceremonial uniform consists of the following items. Pharian, a scarlet fez with a long black silk tassel, with the national emblem on the front. Doulimas, a long tunic which is the everyday uniform. There are winter and summer versions. The basic color of the winter doulimas is navy blue and it closely resembles the service uniform worn until 1910, while the summer version is light khaki, and similar in design to the field uniform adopted by the Evzone regiments after that date. Fustella, a cotton kilt made from 30 meters of white cloth, with supposedly 400 pleats representing the 400 years of Ottoman occupation. The fustella derives from the traditional uniform of continental Greece. Podites, a white shirt with very wide sleeves. Fameli, the waistcoat. Various traditional designs are embroidered on it in white gilt thread. The yellow stripes indicate the military rank of the wearer. Sergeants have 2 stripes and corporals have 1. Crosier, fringes in blue and white, the colors of the Greek flag. Epicnomides, unofficially called chalcodotes, the garters. They are made of black silk. Periscalides, white woolen stockings, 2 on each leg. Anaspastis, inside garter which holds the periscalides in position. Zaruchia, red leather clogs with black pompons. Under the sole, depending on the size, there are 60 to 120 nails. On average each zaruchi weighs approximately 1.5 kilos. A black leather cartridge belt which has a bayonet belt holder case. When it is very cold, the Evzones wear a dark blue cape. This was formerly part of the field uniform until replaced by a khaki version in 1910. They are armed with the M1 Garand semi-automatic rifle, with bayonet. Everyday uniform consists of the Pharian, doulimas, stockings, garters, and zaruchia. Formal dress, which is worn on Sundays, on important national holidays, at the reception of foreign dignitaries and on other special occasions, consists of the Pharian, podites, fustanella, fameli, crosier, stockings, garters and zaruchia. The first king of modern Greece, Otto, often wore this uniform in public. Today, many Greek boys dress up as Tsoliás on Greek Independence Day. Island and Pontic variants. Members of the Guard can also sometimes be seen in a royal blue and red uniform based on the traditional male costume of the Aegean Islands, or in a uniform based on the black traditional habit once worn by the Pontic Greeks. These variants are worn on ceremonial occasions where there is a requirement for Evzones to undertake unarmed duties, usually alongside armed Evzones dressed in the form formal ceremonial uniform. While predominantly Cretan in origin, it is sometimes incorrectly called the Cretan uniform. The island uniform incorporates elements from various costumes of the Aegean Islands. It consists of a tassel-less fez Cretan-style coat in blue with a red vest and white shirt, the distinctive blue islander breech, Cretan-style belt with a Cretan knife and white leather thigh-high boots. An Evzone wearing the island uniform is also called the Vrakoph Ros. The Pontic uniform is only worn on May 19 in commemoration of the Greek genocide. Officers' uniform. The uniform of the officers is closer to the original dress worn by the Klefts. Its main differences are the longer fustella, the more elaborate Fameli Tyrian purple with gold embroidery, whose sleeves are worn closed on the arms instead of being fastened to the coat, red and gold gaiters that cover the whole lower leg worn over red trousers, and red boots. The rank is indicated below the national emblem on the Pharian, and they are armed with a pala, a Kalij-style sword. The uniforms are completely handmade. They are sewn and maintained by civilian personnel of the Presidential Guard in workshops in the camp. Service uniform. The Evzones wear the regular Hellenic army uniform when not in guard service. They are distinguished from the other army units by an azure beret and blue embroidered patches on the shoulders which have white letters that form the words Pi Rho Omicron Epsilon Delta Rho Iota Kappa Eta Phi Rho Omicron Upsilon Rho Alpha. Notable Evzones: Emmanuel Zymvrakakis, Ioannis Velasriou, Demetrios Saros, Christodoulos Sigantis, Thrasivoulos Sakalatos, Paul of Greece, Prince Peter of Greece and Denmark, Konstantinos Goukidis, Evangelos Mimarkis, Stelios Manolas, Nikos Sissis, Kostas Slukas, Nikos Papas,